everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. And what I want to cover and talk about today is images. And the thing I want to talk about is how to handle like broken images. So there's two things that can happen. You have like a set of data, and sometimes the images, the image property where like there would normally be an image URL doesn't have a URL. That's one problem. So it's like it's undefined. There's one way to handle that. Then there's the issue where there is a URL, but the URL doesn't work. Like it tries to pull the data, it just unsuccessfully pulls the data. That's a separate issue. Okay, so let's talk about how to handle like sort of each one using Express and EJS in this particular tutorial. So let's do that. So let me go to, I'm gonna just use that same project that I used for like the auth video I did recently. But basically what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new route. So I'm just going to add it to my home router. Okay, and actually we'll just use this home page. That works for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some data. We'll just create some dummy data. Say const cheese equals, we'll make it an array of objects. And each object represents one cheese. So the name is Gouda, and then each one will have an image property that's start out as an empty string, and an empty string is falsy, so keep that in mind. There's 5 things that are falsy: null, undefined, an empty string, not a string with a space, an empty string, the number 0, and undefined, null. There's one other thing. Oh, and the word false. Of course. Not the string of false. So false as a string would be truthy. It's false, the value false. Okay, there is a difference. Okay. So we'll just have 3 cheeses. Munster, provolone. Funny thing is I don't actually even need that much cheese. Okay, so let me go get some images. So let me go grab a browser. Okay, images.google.com, and let's grab some. First, we'll just grab the Gouda. So picture some Gouda. Okay, copy image address. I'll put that right over here. Then I will get a picture of the Munster. Well, Munster cheese. There we go. That works for me. Copy image address. So, and then I'll leave provolone alone. Okay. So here I have some data, a data set of cheese, and I'm going to send that over to my template. So second argument to my res.render, I'm going to send over the cheese, and now my home template should be able to receive cheese. So I'm going to go to my views, go to my home.ejs. Okay, again, I have all my includes here because I'm using partials, which means I can, instead of writing the head tag, I just have this partial here that is my head tag, and I can just inject it into my template. The great thing about that is I can have the same navigation bar, the same footer on every page without having to redo it. And if I need to make a change, I only make a change to one file. That's the nice thing about partials. I just put all the partials in this folder and then just inject the partials where I need them to be. Very nice. Okay, so then all I have to worry about is really what's here in this main tag. So what I'm going to do is just quickly loop over the cheeses. So for every share of cheese. Okay. Opening curly bracket. Put the symbols around the closing curly bracket. Just so that we distinguish from where we're in EJS mode versus where we're in normal HTML mode. Okay. There we go. And then I'm going to do 2 things. I am going to create an H1. And this H1 is going to have the name of the cheese. Share.name, I think it was. Let me go take a look at that. What did I call it? Yeah, so it's name and image. Okay, share.name, percentage that, and then we're going to have an image tag. And again, every image tag has a source property that determines what image is being rendered there. So percentage equals share.image. Okay. And then that's the image. Okay. And first we'll just show this, like, the result of this. Let's get rid of that. This, yeah, no, that's right. Slash, there we go. Okay, and now let me run the server. npm run dev. Let's go to the home page, localhost 3000. And see, I see Gouda, I see Munster, but see Provolone, I get nothing. Okay. So, what is one way that I could possibly fix this? I see an extra quotation mark there. Now, what I could do is, because for one of them, they have an empty string, which is falsy, and I could take advantage of that. I could use a ternary operator. So I could do something like this. Shay.image. So this checks, hey, does this image have a value? If it's a falsy value, if it's a truthy value, it'll just use the image value. And then I can put some sort of default after the colon, which would be if it's false. So like if it's undefined, if it's an empty string, if it's null, and then I go grab like some other default value. So I'll just like go back to images.google.com and we'll say default. Okay, default cheese. Okay, try to look for like a very generic looking cheese. Yeah, we'll just use this whole thing. Copy image address. And so it'll use this instead. And again, this has got to be a string. Okay. Cool. So now if I refresh this page. Okay, so again, right now Provolone has nothing, but if I refresh it now, see, Provolone shows this because even though the Provolone item in the array had an empty string, the empty string is treated as false, so the false condition is met in that ternary operator, and it shows the default image. So that's one way to handle it. Okay, but here's the problem with that. If I go back to my home, and I actually, let's say I break one of these images so that way just like it doesn't work, so I'll just take out some of these letters. So this URL is now wrong. But the URL is still there, so it's still truthy, because it's still a string. That's not empty. It's not an empty string. So that default image isn't going to help me. So see, now I just get this broken image for Gouda. Okay? And whenever an image breaks, like if I go Shift-I, and I take a look here at network, I refresh the page, see, I see that the image failed to load. Okay, I can see here, it did not find the image. It was unsuccessful. There's a 404 error, meaning not found. So what I need to do is try to create some way to catch that. So the ternary operator isn't going to help me with that because it's not checking to see if it successfully found the image. It's just checking to see, is there a string? So there is a built-in way. There's something built into how sort of like the browser works. It actually triggers an error event. So when it fails to bring in like a CSS file, fails to bring in like an image, anytime we see one of these, like it tries to pull in a resource and it fails like this, it does trigger an error event we can listen for. Kind of like we can listen for a click, we can listen for mouse over, you know, listen to all sorts of things. But for that, I need front-end JavaScript. So that means I'm going to have to create a JavaScript file. Okay, so I'm going to go have to change my head. So I'm going to head over to my partials folder, find my head tag, and I'm going to use Jquery. Okay, I'm going to use Jquery. I'll show it to you both ways. Okay, but first we'll do it with Jquery. Code.jquery.com. Okay, I'll go get the Jquery script tag so that way I can use it. Okay, and I'm going to put Jquery in my head tag, so that way technically it's going to be available in all my pages. I'll be able to use Jquery. So boop, there's Jquery. And then I need to create my own JavaScript file. So I'm going to create I'll create a folder called JS. And in that folder I'll create a new file called app.js. And again, this is in my public folder because my public folder are going to be resources that my front end can then refer to via like script tags and stuff. So I go back to my head tag, and I'm going to go add a script tag, and then I'm just going to refer to my, again, it's going to be in the JS folder, so /js / app.js. Okay, and now just to double check. Okay, let me just make sure that it's actually grabbing the file. So I'm going to refresh. Okay, and look, I see that it is successfully grabbing the style.css and the app.js that are in my public folder. I see those in there. I can also see it under sources. I can say, hey, look, there's the two folders. In CSS, there's my style.css, there's my app.js. So those are connected. Wonderful. Okay, so now we can actually put some code in the app.js, but I should probably put a defer keyword in that script tag, or else it's not going to work. So defer. Okay, now I go to my app.js, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select all image tags. So const, actually we'll just do $, the jQuery function, $, and then I'm going to grab all image tags. So I'm going to just query all image tags, and then I'm going to add an event listener and just say, hey, whenever there's an error, so it's the error event onError. If there's an error event, then what I want to happen is this. And again, I need the event object, because again, every event that happens always gets an event object. And what I want is whatever image, I want to replace the source property of whatever image failed. So I'm going to grab the target. So I'm just going to save that image in here. So we're going to just say $, because I want to turn it into like a jQuery thing. So event dot target. So this passes the event dot target, which is the element that triggered the error or that triggered the event. It passes that element to the jQuery function, wrapping it in the jQuery wrapper so I can use jQuery functions, and saves the result as the image. So that way I can use all my good old jQuery functions. And now I can just do image.attr, which is the jQuery function for changing the attribute. And I want to change the source attribute, and I want to change it to this. I gotta go find a default image. So now I will grab that same, I'll grab this default cheese instead, copy image. So ideally, if this worked, what should end up happening is that, hey, if it fails in getting the image that's already there, what's going to happen is that it's going to run this function, which is going to grab the image, turn it into a jQuery object, and then I'm going to change its attribute. So let's see if that does a thing. So technically, Gouda shouldn't be broken this time around. The same image will break, but when it breaks, it's going to trigger that error event. And it worked. Okay. So there I go. So now I have this default image for when if I just need a default image for when things don't work. So this is great for like avatars on a social network, things like that. Now, how would I do that in just plain vanilla JavaScript? Okay, so if I wanted to do that in just plain vanilla JavaScript, it would look like this. Okay, I would use document.query selector. I would select images. Again, works pretty much like the jQuery function. So I'm going to select, and I want to choose selector all, because I want to select all of them. Then I'm going to do add event listener, or actually, yeah, I don't think I have to do for each. I have to loop over the array, because that's going to return me an array of images. So for each image tag that's in that thing, I would then just do an event listener, add image dot add event listener. And again, I'm listening for an error event. And when that event happens, there's an event. Okay, and then it's going to be like event dot target, because that's the thing we clicked on. Although I don't necessarily need to use that, because technically I have that particular image stored here. But it's probably still better to keep it relative just in case. So event dot target dot, is it set attribute? remove event listener, dispatch event dot. Let's try this one. Now let me just see what the would be. Image dot set. Yeah, it's set attribute. So it should be event dot target dot set attribute. And which attribute do I want to set? The source attribute. And what do I want to set it to? This. So this should work the same. Okay, so again, the idea is that basically I'm adding this event listener to each image tag that it finds. Okay, because I just basically said, hey, find me all the image tags. Then I looped over the array that it gave me of image tags. And then for each image tag in that array, I added an event listener. So not quite as straightforward as the Jquery version. That's why Jquery is nice. Okay, and let's try that out. Let's make sure that worked. No, I didn't quite do that. Event dot target. I mean, I could also just do this because I know that this is looping, so this image tag is always going to represent the particular image. So this should work just fine if I just do that. Image.set attribute and not use the event. Oh, it still didn't quite work. Let's see why. Let's see, do I have an error in the console? I've got error. Image.set attribute is not a function. At HTML. Okay, it's not a function. Interesting. Let's take a look. Let's examine this further. Oh, because I didn't spell attribute right. Set attribute. So let's try that again. And now it works. Okay, good. It works. And then since I had that typed wrong, let me try that. See if it did work with event.target. Target. Refresh the page again. Yeah, no, that was it. I just had a typo. That's all. Cool. But yeah, so that's how you would handle like broken images. Okay, so you could, if you're worrying about like whether the image actually exists on that particular object or not, you could use a ternary operator to test, hey, does this particular, and that's really typical with like APIs. Because like let's say you're pulling from some third-party API, what happens oftentimes is not every object looks identical. So you oftentimes have to check, does the property exist? So you can do that with ternary operators in your EJS. Secondary, and just in general, images can break because maybe the image no longer exists at a URL, so you can set up a default image by using the error event on an image tag. And that's that. That's how you can handle broken images in your code. So I'll leave it at that. I'll see you all later on. Have a great day and enjoy.